G'day folks, how you going? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then a special good day to you. If you're a returning viewer, then thanks for coming back. This week we are in Peterborough and we are going to look at the amazing Steamtown. Now Steamtown is got to do with the trains and the steam trains that used to operate in Peterborough. They do two tours in there, and one in the daytime and one at the night time, and yes, I did both of them. Now before we get started, I think we need to just quickly talk about how Steamtown first came here to Peterborough, and in fact how Peterborough ended up where Peterborough is, and what's its connection with Broken Hill in New South Wales. So grab a drink, grab a seat, and let's have a look around Steamtown. Okay, so the story of Peterborough and how it got there. Back in the 1800s, for whatever reason, Adelaide had three different types of train lines, three different sizes, whether it was passenger, whether it was cargo, where it was going at different lines. And they had a line that was running from the south, from Adelaide, going up into the farming areas to the north, and mining up like out to Flinders Ranges direction, sort of thing, you know. And over in Broken Hill in New South Wales, they discovered silver, and they're trying to work out how to get the silver from Broken Hill to a port. If they tried to go to a Sydney port, it'd be very expensive to put a railway line in, because they've got to get somehow through and over the Blue Mountains, and it worked out easier to send a railway line to Port Pirie. So all they had to do was put the line in, and it's relatively flat ground, so it was quite easy to do. Now at some point, that railway line coming from Broken Hill to Port Pirie had to cross the north-south line going from Adelaide up to the north. So X marks the spot, and that's where a town was going to go in. Now a fella that was quite involved with setting the town up, his name was Petersburg. The town was named after him, and I think the town was actually built on his property, so that's why it kind of got that name. Now when the trains came in from wherever, because they were going on to different lines, the stock had to be, or whatever they were carting, had to be manhandled from one type of wagon onto another type of wagon because of the different wheel sizes. So for argument's sake, if it comes in from Port Pirie, it then needed to be changed on a wagon to go to Broken Hill, or if it came from the south, changed to, well that one was probably the same going through. But you get what I mean. The stuff had to be rotated from one wagon to another, and then later on, when the line to Western Australia was put in, that made things more difficult again, because passengers and people had to be shifted from one train to another. Now it made sense to put a workshop there in Peterborough, because of all the different types of stock and trains and stuff coming through. It was a good spot to be able to put a workshop, and that's why the Steamtown workshops were put in there. Probably wasn't called Steamtown then, but it is now. So that's why that was put in there. And then later on, when World War I started, because of the anti-German sentiment and everything, they changed the name from Petersburg to Peterborough, and that's how it got its new name, and it's been known as that ever since. So that's basically the story of how and why Peterborough is where it is. Alright, we're going to do a tour around the Peterborough Rail Museum. So it's a guided tour, so we'll see what they have got for us. There are no set times for tours here at Steamtown. Tours just keep running around the site non-stop, and you just join the tour and go around till you get back to the point where you started from.
Where starts where you finish. Yep, we'll do a complete circle.
It was a good place to start, sitting in a first-class lounge car.
It was scalded to death when the boiler burst, and taken on to be sold for slaughter anyway, poor things. But anyway, yeah.
As we leave the first-class car, we head into the rail yard, past the turntable that was used to turn engines around so that they're pointing in the direction they need to travel. Apparently, they still use this turntable from time to time.
It's able to be moved. You can see the front section is on wheel.
The carriage on the turntable is where you sit if you come in for the nighttime show. But don't get too excited if you're on the night tour. You don't get to go around the turntable. The turntable was installed in the early days of Steamtown's operations as part of the broader railway infrastructure. It played a critical role in the maintenance and operations of steam and later diesel locomotives. The South Australian government bought 3 of these 1927 Morris cars, which were then modified to run on the 3 different types of tracks. These cars were used for track inspections, managers used them to visit stations, and paymasters used them to deliver pay packets around the line. You had to be an engine driver to drive this car on the rails because you needed to know all the rules with lights and signals.
But they had to have a driver, a man who knew the same rules as an engine driver to keep safe on the tracks, and that job was to make sure that they obeyed all the...
Originally white, they were repainted black. But when the accident rate went up, because road car drivers were saying they didn't see the black car, because they were looking for a big black train. The cars were then repainted white. When parts from the old Morris motor became too hard to find, the engine was replaced with a Holden grey motor. Surprisingly, there are a number of engines here that came from Western Australia. PMR 720 originated in WA in 1950. It was condemned in 1972, sold to South Australia in 1979, repaired and put back into service in 1981. Then retired in the late 1980s because of a lube failure. Here's something I didn't know or even think about. The small front and rear wheels were there to provide stability when travelling, and the bigger wheels were the driving wheels. That bit I knew. The coal storage. From here, the firemen would shovel the coal into the firebox, which would then boil the water to make the steam. It would have been a dirty and, after breathing all that coal dust for years, most likely a terminal job. Turn a few knobs, open a few valves, pull a few levers, and away you go. Easy. Not. The death of the steam train came with the introduction of the diesel engine, or more accurately, the diesel electric. On a diesel train engine, the component that is spun by the engine to generate electricity is called the alternator. The alternator converts the mechanical energy from the diesel engine into electrical energy, which is then used to power the electrical traction motors and other electrical systems. And if you ever wanted to know what's inside one of these, well, let's find out. The cabin looks a little more modern. This model was built in the Birmingham Railway Carriage and Wagon Company in the United Kingdom. The NSU class was introduced in the 1950s, marking a significant transition from steam to diesel electric for the Central Australian Railway and the North Australian Railway. These locomotives were designed for rugged terrain and long distances, making them suitable for the challenging conditions of the Central and Northern Australian railways. But it's not just the dunny back here. First, there is a massive engine, which is then connected to the alternator. But that's not all. There's also a massive air compressor that pumps air down the full length of the train to supply air for the braking system. Same spot. You can see on the right the size of the Ryobi piston, and on the left a Holden piston, and then the piston from this engine. Here we have a few examples of crew transfer vehicles. These were used to move people like work gangs up and down the line. These motorised rail work carts are a vast improvement over the original trolleys, which required a person, or probably 2, 3 or even 4 would be better, to move a handle up and down in a seesaw manner. Those early hand-powered trolley carts couldn't carry much equipment because it would be too heavy to move. We now move into the wagons, an example of a mobile workshop.
4 hours a day. I remember once there was a huge derailment between Manor Hill and O'Leary when I lived up there in about 9.
And then sometimes the work crew had to sleep out on the job site. One of the great things about this museum is that not only do you get to go and see the stuff, you get to go in and touch and experience the history, within reason. Now, trains weren't just to move people and freight around. Some were used to provide services like shops and medical to outback communities. Now, who knows why you could never use a toilet while at the station? Put your answer down below in the comments.
Yep, that's right.
This was the guard's wagon, or if you're in America, I think they call them a caboose. Now we move into the passenger wagons. This is a type that might have been used on the Indian Pacific during the 40s and 50s. that right?
Tracks.
As you would.
Yeah, as you would.
The aisles are
We
one
used to go to
person wide,
Steamtown
so meeting
Heritage
someone
Rail
along the way was a bit of a dance to get past.
Adelaide, we did the same thing, you know. We used to go to these sort of crossing first classes, the red rattles, with the sleepers.
The workmanship that went into these wagons, you just don't get that anymore these days. I like the look of the wood, and when it's highly polished like this, it just looks amazing. And back in the day, you probably paid through the nose to have the privilege of travelling in this style. Travelling in these back in the day wasn't about getting somewhere as quick as possible. It was about the journey. And if you want to get an idea of what that was like, well, you can, sort of. But for that, you're going to have to wait till next week's video. And here we are back at the wagon where we came in. It's hard to believe that in the 1930s rail wagons had air cons in them. But yet, this one still has the original equipment in it. And it's only by luck that it survived demolition. But to hear that story, you'll have to go and do the tour.
It still has that air conditioning in, it still has the fans, the original light fittings, all the wall paneling and the glass windows are still original, which is wonderful. Experiment, it worked on the whole fairly successfully. Sometimes.
When you look at these machines, back in the day it must have been a pretty massive moment for a new driver to have all that power in your hands. We'll see more from this steam train tonight when we come back. Here's one of these hand push carts I was talking about earlier. You would certainly get your work out on one of these. The sound of the modern diesel engine starting up. These 500 class locos were built here in South Australia from 1964 to 1969. These were mainly shunting engines, which means that they were used to move wagons around the rail yard. While most of these are now cars or something, there are still about 8 around, with a couple still being used today. Everything is so much bigger. The engine is bigger, the amount they can pull is bigger. There is just so much more in this than what was in the earlier one that we looked at. This sleeper wagon was built in 1922 in Port Augusta as a first-class sleeper car for the Trans-Australian Railway between Port Augusta and Kalgoorlie. In 1976 it was converted to a sleeper car with a staggered corridor as part of the Transline upgrade. It was found to be surplus to requirements, and so in 1961 it was converted to narrow gauge wheels and then used on the Gann line to Alice Springs till 1980. Well, I've got to be honest, if I was crossing the country sitting in this, it'd be very uncomfortable. Seat is straight up and down and there's very little actually to sit on as far as a cushion. I'm guessing behind that door there must be where your bed would come down. Probably should have sat in this seat first because this one's a lot more comfortable. It's a bit more laid back. It's got little armrests And this behind me here is where the bed will drop down. I don't know what that seat over there is, but yeah, that's not the greatest one. Remember that steam train I said we'll see more about later? It's got its own little show. All aboard! After that, we went outside to the turntable. We all took our seats and waited for the show to start. Unfortunately, they don't allow videoing of the show, but photos were okay. But basically, it tells a very good story of Peterborough and its place in history. Very much worth seeing. Well, we'll pretend we didn't see this little bit to give you just a taste of what it's like. Don't tell anyone.
She was a sturdy, reliable workforce, and she worked the northern system through most of the days of steam.
I'm tied to your tracks, love. I wish that I am your last love. This dream seems to be killing me, but I can't get enough. No, I can't get enough. Once again.
Well, there you go. That is Steamtown. What an amazing place. If you are into steam trains or trains and things, you should put this on your to-do list. It's worth doing. Now, the tours go for about an hour each, and at least with the daytime one, I would think if you probably missed something, you could probably keep going around to catch whatever it was that you missed the first time around. The rolling tours idea, I actually think is a pretty good idea, because now you can actually just go to the tour whenever you're ready to. You don't have to fit into a certain slot or anything, and you just go around until you come back to the point where you got in, and then you can leave again. I think that's a great idea. I've never come across that before. Anyway, next week we are going to have a look at the town of Peterborough itself. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps the channel out by making YouTube show my videos to other viewers. And if you don't want to miss anything, hit that subscribe button down the corner down here, and the thumbs and the bell next to it, because that will then let you know when I've uploaded another video. But that's it for now. So till next time, happy travels.